Speaking of which, Brinson's Rams have clinched a playoff spot now that my Geno Smith's lost to my Mason Rudolph. So we'll talk about that in a moment. To continue the conversation of the NFC that Brinson mentioned there, producer Harry asked a very fair question, especially in light of losing to the Kyler Murrays, another revenge game that Brinson will manufacture. The Eagles lost at home to a Cardinals team, an upstart Cardinals team. Shout out to what Jonathan Gannon's getting out of that crew. Shout out to Kyler Murray for playing well. How do you fix the Eagles? Producer Harry asks. So Philly's making the playoffs. They only have a 20% chance to win the division now. They have to beat the Giants next week, and Dallas has to lose to Washington for that to happen. But Brinson, let me read you some sad facts if you're an Eagles fan to try to answer the question about how you fix the Eagles. On offense, over the last month, since week 13, they're 27th in allowing turnovers, near the bottom in terms of the most. They have 8 turnovers over that span. They're not making any explosive plays, only 6 plays of 25 or more yards over the last month. That's 27th. They're terrible in the red zone. On defense, they're near the bottom in takeaways. They're near the bottom in allowing opponents points per game, near the bottom in yards per game, both passing and against the run. They're near the bottom in sacks. They're near the bottom in stopping third down conversions and fourth down conversions, and they're 31st in red zone efficiency in terms of they're letting teams into the end zone or kicking field goals once again to the red zone more than every other team except one. So to bring you back to Harry's question, how do you fix the Eagles?
Look, if you take the Eagles since the bye, week 10, they beat the Chiefs and the Bills coming out of the bye, and both of those wins were like total. They just find ways to win, even though they clearly got beat in those games wins. They should have lost both of those games. They lose the next 3 to the Niners, Cowboys, and Seahawks. They beat the Giants on Christmas Day, and it wasn't easy, and they could have been gone the other way. And then they lose at home to the Cardinals 6 days later. This is a team that, quite frankly, could be 9-6.
Do you want to give we're not talking about the Cardinals here, but it just pops to my head. The Cardinals actually beat the Eagles and the Cowboys this year, so that's noteworthy.
Cardinals, look, revenge game for Jonathan Gannon, of course. Frisky response by the Cardinals here.
Well, the Cardinals went undefeated in the state of Pennsylvania. They're the Pennsylvania state champions.
James Conner revenge game against Pittsburgh and
beat the Eagles and the Steelers.
That's right.
And they good call in James Conner revenge game. They swung through and smoked Penn State too in the Peach Bowl while they're at it. I think that I just have Philly feels like we're talking about the Rams and we're talking about the Bills and the team you don't want to play in the playoffs. They're getting hot at the right time. Everything's kind of clicking at exactly the right time you want it to. Philly feels like the polar opposite of that. And they were this team that early on, remember, they beat the Patriots. They barely beat the Patriots week 1 on the road in New England, tough spot. They beat the Vikings by 1 score. They handled the Bucs on that Monday night game, I think. It was an early Monday night game. They barely beat the Commanders at home. They're just like living on these, like a bunch of these 1-score games. They've been wobbly all season long, and I have a really, really hard time trusting them when we get to the playoffs. And if we talk about what's going to happen, if they're going to lose the division now, it's almost unfathomable that they're losing the division, the NFC East to the Cowboys.
They have to beat the Giants, and the Dallas has to lose to Washington. Both those games are on the road for the teams that we're talking about here. Breach.
Philly had to beat the Giants twice and the Cardinals once to get the division, and they couldn't do it.
Well, that's why we play the games. So, Breach, I was talking to our buddy Debo, who's a diehard Eagles fan, and I said to him before this game, I said, would you rather have Brian Johnson, who replaced Shane Steichen, calling plays for the rest of the season, or Matt Patricia, who is now the defensive coordinator, just calling both offensive and defensive plays? He said Matty P. So where are you on how you fix this mess?
Well, I'm not sure how you fix it in the next 2 weeks, which is what you need to do because the playoffs start in 2 weeks. But I think it all comes down to Jalen Hurts. He just does not look like the Jalen Hurts of last year. If you would have said to someone, hey, look, Jalen Hurts finishes this game 18-23 and throws 3 touchdown passes, you're probably thinking, well, that's not that bad. But, he only threw for 167 yards. I mean, threw for under 170 yards, and this offense just isn't intimidating anymore. I mean, you're talking about an offense that has Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, DeAndre Swift, who was on fire early in the season. The rushing attack has kind of slowed down, and it just seems like it's seems like it's not one thing. It's a collection of things, this confluence of things that has just kind of hit this team at the worst time. And I think they're getting frustrated because they can't figure out how to fix it. And you have these guys pointing fingers. Even after they beat the Giants, they were pointing fingers, and that was a game they won. How do you think they're going to feel after they lost their former defensive coordinator, who probably loved the fact that he was going in this game? As you guys mentioned, it's a revenge game, but it's also one where he's thinking, these guys have not been good on offense. We are going to beat them. And remember, they had a pick six in this game, so the offense only scored 24 points. I'm not sure how you fix it, and certainly not how you fix it in 2 weeks. Jalen Hurts just has to play better.
AJ Brown.
I mean, it's worth noting that the defense has been absolutely atrocious. So Jalen Hurts has not been himself, no doubt about it. And there are questions about the play calling, no doubt about that. But the defense has not helped out, and that's
defense has been terrible.
So they have 9 sacks over the since week 13, which ranks 27th. Who do you think has the most sacks since that time? Which team?
The Chicago Bears.
That's not a terrible guess. You want to guess, Breach?
The Ravens.
The Houston Texans. Think about
Will
that.
Anderson. Will Anderson.
So that's, I mean, that's sort of the, the numbers no one talks about, but how it helps a team, a young team, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, that's part of the reason why the Eagles are where they are. Since
Halloween, AJ Brown, who I love, I think AJ Brown's an incredible football player. But
if you love him, you'll tell me his full name.
Arthur Juan Brown.
Oh, snap.
He got it.
I just got it. Arthur Juan Brown.
Way to go. All right, you love him. Go ahead.
Snap on me.
That's right. You got snapped. Since Halloween, he has 2 touchdowns. No, excuse me. 2 touchdowns and 1 100-yard game. And that 100-yard game came in the 42-19 loss to the 49ers. So plenty of garbage time there. It has been this passing attack is not what it was. It feels like the Eagles offense is, and maybe this is partially because of how, when you're watching a bunch of games and you're hearing the commentary, it feels like the Eagles offense is basically designed to get them into tush-push situations.
Oh, they're crushing it on 3rd and 4th down conversions. I will give them that. In terms of all the things we talked about, they just run the tush-push every time, and maybe there's something to that.